Part 1. For many years, Earth had watched the stars with hope. Humans dreamed of joining the great family of spacefaring civilizations known as the Galactic Concord. The Concord was made up of dozens of alien species, each more advanced than the last. They had rules, laws, and a council that decided the fate of entire worlds. Earth wanted to be part of that. Not to rule, not to conquer, but to belong. But the Concord did not see Earth the same way. To them, humans were loud, emotional, and reckless. Their science was young. Their history was soaked in war. The Concord called Earth unstable and unready. Every time Earth applied for full membership, the answer was the same: not yet. Year after year, decade after decade, the door stayed closed. Then came the day everything changed. It started with a message. Not a request, not a discussion. Just a cold, clear order from the Galactic Council. Earth's colonies on Mars, Titan, and the moons of Jupiter were no longer human. They now belonged to the Concord for the sake of galactic stability. The Concord claimed Earth could not protect its own people from pirates, rebels, or cosmic threats, so they would do it for them. No vote was held. No warning was given. Within hours, silver ships with smooth, insect-like hulls appeared in orbit. They were Cathari, tall, armored enforcers of the Concord. They moved with perfect silence, cutting off Earth's communication with its outer colonies. Human defense stations were shut down remotely. Soldiers were disarmed without a fight. It was not an invasion. It was a takeover wrapped in legal language. On Luna Base, deep inside the moon's mare Tranquillitatis crater, Captain Daniel Reeves stood in the command center, staring at the main screen. The feed showed a Cathari vessel hovering over Mars Colony Alpha. Below, men and women in Earth uniforms were being led away in lines, hands behind their heads. Their faces showed confusion, shame, and anger. Reeves said nothing. His jaw was tight. His eyes burned. He had spent 20 years in space defense, training, planning, believing that one day Earth would earn its place among the stars. Now that dream felt like a joke. Beside him, Lieutenant Mara Ellis leaned against the console, arms crossed. She was usually quick with a sharp remark or a dry joke, but now she was quiet. Her dark eyes followed the feed as another human outpost went dark. "They didn't even ask," she finally said, her voice low. "They just took it." Reeves nodded. "Because they think we can't do anything about it." Back on Earth, the news spread like wildfire. In New York, Tokyo, Nairobi, and Buenos Aires, people poured into the streets. They held signs that read, "We are not yours and Earth stands alone." But the Concord didn't care. Their broadcasts called the protests primitive emotional outbursts. They said humans lacked the maturity for self-governance. The message was clear. Earth was not an equal. It was a child to be managed. Governments tried to respond. The United Earth Assembly sent formal complaints. They demanded negotiations. The Concord ignored them. Then, to make their point even clearer, they broadcast a live session of the council. Ambassador Kyle Vore of the Cathari stood before the chamber, his voice calm and cold. "Humanity has shown repeated inability to maintain order beyond its home world," he said. "Their colonies were breeding grounds for dissent and illegal tech trade. The Concord has acted not out of aggression but responsibility. Earth will be allowed to keep its homeworld. For now." The words stung like acid. Not because they were harsh, but because they were spoken as if Earth had no voice at all. In a hidden bunker beneath the ice of Antarctica, Dr. Owen Pierce watched the broadcast with a grim expression. He was not a soldier. He was a physicist. But for the past 15 years, he had been part of something bigger than science. Something secret. Something necessary. Around him, engineers and technicians moved quietly through the massive underground facility. Walls hummed with energy. Strange machines pulsed with blue light. This was Project Iron Cradle, the last hope Earth never admitted it had. After the first failed attempts to join the Concord, Earth's leaders made a quiet decision. If the galaxy would not accept them as friends, they would prepare to be feared as enemies, not out of hatred, but out of survival. They gathered every scrap of alien tech they could find. Wreckage from early scout ships, debris from border skirmishes, even gifts from curious traders who didn't know better. Then they did what humans always did. They took it apart, studied it, and built something better. Now, deep under the ice, 12 ships waited in silent bays. Each was sleek, black, and shaped like a blade. They ran on cores that bent space and time. Their weapons could punch through shields that had held for centuries, and their cloaking systems made them invisible, not just to radar, but to the very fabric of detection used by the Concorde. But none of that mattered if no one had the will to use it. On Luna Base, Reeves finally turned away from the screen. "They think we'll just accept this," he said. Ellis looked at him. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking Earth doesn't beg anymore." She didn't smile, but something in her eyes changed. It was no longer just anger. It was purpose. Far above, the Cathari ships continued their patrols, confident and calm. They had no idea that below them, on the quiet blue planet they had just humiliated, something ancient had awakened. Not a beast. Not a god. Just a simple truth. When you push a cornered animal too far, it stops running and starts fighting, and Earth was done running. Part 2. After the Concord took the colonies, Earth went quiet. No more protests, no more speeches. The streets emptied. The news channels stopped shouting. To the galaxy it looked like surrender. But beneath the surface something else was happening. Deep under the ocean, in a place so far down that sunlight had never touched it, a city hummed with life. It was built into the walls of the Mariana Trench, hidden by pressure, darkness, and clever tech. This was one of Earth's secret places. Another was buried under the ice of Antarctica. A third sat inside an old volcano in the Pacific. These were not military bases in the old sense. They were workshops of survival. Dr. Owen Pierce walked through the main chamber of the Antarctic facility. His boots clicked on the metal floor. Around him, engineers worked in silence. Some adjusted glowing circuits, others tested weapons that fired beams of pure sound. No one spoke much. There was no need. They all knew what was at stake. Pierce stopped at a large window. Beyond it, in a dry dock lit by soft blue lights, sat a ship. It was long and sharp, like a knife made for space. Its hull was blacker than night. No markings, no flags, just power, waiting. "That's the Ares Dawn," said a voice behind him. He turned. Lena Torres stood there, arms crossed. She was the lead engineer of Project Iron Cradle. Her hands were always stained with grease, and her eyes always tired, but she never complained. She believed in this more than anyone. "It's ready," she said simply. Pierce nodded. "Reeves will be here tomorrow." "He knows what we're asking him to do?" "He's the only one who can do it." They both looked back at the ship. It wasn't just a vessel. It was Earth's answer. For years, scientists had studied alien tech, not to copy it, but to understand its weaknesses. They found that Concord shields relied on harmonic frequencies, so they built resonance cannons that could shatter those frequencies like glass. They learned that Cathari sensors tracked heat and energy pulses, so they created phase shift fields that bent light and heat around their ships, making them ghosts in space. The fleet was small, only 12 ships, but each one carried enough firepower to level a moon. And they were fast, faster than anything the Concorde had ever seen. But speed and weapons weren't enough. They needed a leader, someone who knew when to strike and when to hold back. That was why they chose Daniel Reeves. On Luna Base, Reeves stood in his quarters, staring at a photo on his desk. It showed him and his younger sister smiling on a beach in California. She had lived on Mars Colony Beta. Now she was gone, taken by the Concorde for her own safety. He hadn't heard from her in weeks. A knock came at the door. "Come in," he said. Mara Ellis stepped inside. She held a data pad. "Orders from Earth Command," she said. "You've been reassigned." He didn't look up. "To where?" "Project Iron Cradle. You're in command." Now he looked at her. "You knew about this?" "Not all of it, but I knew we weren't done." She handed him the pad. They've been building this for years, in secret, waiting for the right moment. And now it's here. Yes. He stood up and walked to the window. Earth hung in the blackness below, blue and fragile. They think we're weak, he said. They think we'll just sit here and take it. Maybe they're right, Ellis said. Maybe we should talk, negotiate. Reeves turned to her. We tried that. They laughed. She didn't argue. She knew he was right. The Concord didn't respect words. They respected power. And Earth had been pretending it didn't have any. The next day, Reeves boarded a shuttle and left Luna. He flew south, over the Pacific, toward the hidden entrance of the Antarctic base. Snowstorms raged outside, but the ship's AI guided it safely through. Below the ice, massive doors opened and the shuttle dropped into a warm-lit hangar. Inside, Lena Torres waited. She didn't salute. She just nodded. Welcome to the Forge, she said. Over the next week, Reeves learned everything. He walked the halls of the facility. He met the scientists, the pilots, the weapons specialists. He saw the ships up close. He even tested the cloaking psi. STEM in a simulator. One moment he was there. The next gone, even to his own eyes. What's the plan? He asked Pierce one evening. No war, Pierce said. Not unless we have to. We don't want to rule the galaxy. We just want them to stop treating us like children. So what do? We show them we can hurt them badly. But we don't kill civilians. We don't burn cities. We hit their pride where it lives, their military. Their capital. Their sense of safety. Reeves understood. It wasn't about revenge. It was about balance. If the Conquered thought Earth was harmless, they would keep taking. But if they feared Earth's bite, they might finally listen. Ellis arrived a few days later. She had requested transfer to the project. Someone has to keep you from blowing up the whole galaxy, she told Reeves with a small smile. He almost smiled back. Almost. Training began. Pilots practiced formation flying in simulators. Engineers ran stress tests on the quantum cores. Weapons teams calibrated the resonance cannons to hit exact frequencies. Every detail mattered. One mistake could mean total failure. At night, Reeves walked the empty corridors. He thought about his sister. He thought about the millions of humans now under Conquered control. He thought about the quiet shame in people's eyes when they spoke of Earth these days. That shame would end. One morning, Torres called him to the main bay. She's ready, she said. The Ares Dawn sat in the center, fully armed, fully fueled. Its engines purred softly like a cat waiting to pounce. How long until we can launch? Reeves asked. Whenever you say. He looked at the ship, then at the faces around him. Tired, determined, scared, but not broken. These were not soldiers looking for glory. They were protectors, defenders. People who loved Earth enough to risk everything. Tell the fleet, he said. We move in 48 hours. Word spread fast. In the ocean base, in the volcano, in other hidden places across the planet, crews prepared. 12 ships, 12 crews, one mission. No one cheered. No speeches were made. They just got to work. Back on the surface, the world still looked calm. People went to work. Children went to school. The Conquered ships still patrolled the skies, sure of their control. But deep below, in the dark and the quiet, Earth was loading its guns, and this time, it wouldn't ask for permission to fire. Part 3. The Concord capital world, Velos Prime, floated in peace. Its cities were made of crystal and light. Towers rose miles into the sky, glowing with soft gold and silver. The air was clean. The streets were quiet. For thousands of years, no enemy had dared attack this place. The Conquered's power was absolute. Their defenses were perfect, or so they believed. Inside the Hall of Accord, the council met as usual. Ambassador Kyle Vore of the Cathari stood at the center, speaking about resource distribution. He barely glanced at the empty seat where Earth's delegate should have been. Humans were not invited anymore. They were not considered important. Outside, the orbital docks bustled with trade ships and patrol cruisers. Catharian forces moved with calm confidence. Their silver armor reflected the light of the golden sun. Everything was in order. Everything was under control. They did not see the 12 black ships coming. Far beyond the edge of the system, hidden in the shadow of a dead comet, the Iron Cradle fleet waited. No lights, no signals, no heat trails, They were ghosts in the void. Captain Daniel Reeves sat in the command chair of the Ares Dawn, his hands resting lightly on the armrests. His face was calm. His mind was sharp. "Status," he said quietly. "All ships report ready." Mara Ellis replied from the comms station. "Cloaking holds. Quantum cores stable." "Good," Reeves said. "Remember the rules. No civilian targets, no cities. We hit military assets only. Shields, shipyards, command centers. Nothing else." "Aye, sir," came the reply from every ship. He took a slow breath. This was it. The moment Earth stopped begging and started speaking in a language the galaxy understood. "Engage jump," he ordered. Space bent. Light twisted. In less than a heartbeat, the 12 ships vanished from the comet's shadow and reappeared in high orbit above Velos Prime. Alarms did not sound. Sensors did not flash. The Concord's early warning system saw nothing, because there was nothing to see. The phase shift fields made the human ships invisible to every known form of detection. For 3 full seconds, the fleet hung in silence above the unsuspecting world. Then Reeves gave the command. Fire. 12 resonance cannons fired at once. Beams of focused energy, tuned to the exact frequency of the Concorde's planetary shield, struck the barrier surrounding Velos Prime. The shield did not explode. It unraveled. Like a thread pulled from a tapestry, the entire defense grid collapsed in a ripple of silent blue light. On the surface, people looked up in confusion. The sky had changed. The soft hum of the shield was gone. In orbit, Cathari warships finally powered up, but it was too late. The Ares Dawn and its sister ships dropped their cloaks not all at once but in waves, appearing like shadows given form. Their weapons lit up the darkness. First, the orbital shipyards, massive rings where Concorde warships were built, were hit with precision strikes. Explosions bloomed in silence, metal twisting and melting in the vacuum. Next came the defense platforms. Floating fortresses armed with plasma turrets tried to lock on. But Earth ships moved faster than their targeting systems could follow. Resonance pulses disabled their power cores before they could fire a single shot. The Cathari flagship, the Sovereign Will, powered up its main engines and turned to face the threat. It was a monster of a ship, twice the size of the Ares Dawn, bristling with weapons. But Reeves had studied it for weeks. "Ellis," he said, "target their bridge sensors and main reactor. EMP lance only. Non-lethal." "Aye," she said, fingers flying over her console. A thin beam of electromagnetic energy shot from the Ares Dawn. It struck the Sovereign Will just behind its command spire. Lights flickered across the alien hull. Then one by one they went dark. The great ship drifted, powerless but intact. No lives were lost. But the message was clear. Even your strongest ship is helpless against us. Panic spread through the conquered fleet. Ships collided in confusion. Orders were shouted in a dozen alien tongues. No one knew how many enemies they faced. No one knew where the next strike would come from. Down on Velos Prime, the council chamber fell silent. Ambassador Vor stared at the viewscreen, his face pale beneath his armored skin. "Impossible," he whispered. "How did they get past our sensors?" Elder Mira Solon of the Lumini stood slowly. "They did not sneak in," she said softly. "They walked through your walls like they were air." Above, Reeves watched the chaos unfold. His heart pounded, but his voice stayed steady. "All ships hold position. Do not pursue fleeing vessels. Do not fire on escape pods." He turned to Ellis. "Send the message." She nodded and activated the broadcast system. Her voice, calm and clear, echoed across every frequency used by the Conquered. "This is Captain Daniel Reeves of Earth Defense Command. We do not seek war, but we will not be caged." The words repeated in every major language of the galaxy. On Velos Prime, in distant colonies, on trade routes light years away, beings stopped what they were doing and listened. Then, as quickly as they appeared, the 12 black ships vanished again. Their cloaks re-engaged. Their engines hummed into subspace. Within seconds, they were gone. Only wreckage remained. The Conquered's orbital defenses were in ruins. Their pride was shattered. Their sense of safety, gone. Back on Earth, people gathered around screens in homes, bars, and public squares. They watched the live feeds from Velos Prime with wide eyes. For the first time in years, they stood a little taller. They felt something they had almost forgotten. Hope. In the Antarctic base, Dr. Owen Pierce watched the broadcast with tears in his eyes. Lena Torres stood beside him, arms crossed, but her shoulders shook slightly. They had done it. Not with rage, not with cruelty, but with precision, discipline, and strength. On the Ares dawn, as the ship jumped back toward Earth, Reeves leaned back in his chair. He was tired, but for the first time in a long time he felt peace. Ellis looked at him. "What now?" "Now," he said, "we wait. Because the real test was not the strike. It was what came after. Would the conquered retaliate with full force? Would they finally see Earth as equals? Or would they double down and try to crush them for good?" Reeves didn't know. But one thing was certain. Earth had spoken. And the galaxy had heard. The silence that followed was louder than any explosion. Part 4. In the days after the strike on Velos Prime, the galaxy held its breath. No one moved. No one spoke. The silence was heavy, like the calm before a storm. But the storm never came. Instead, confusion spread through the galactic conquered. Species that had once mocked Earth now whispered in fear. The Cathari demanded immediate war. They called for a full fleet mobilization, for Earth to be glassed from orbit as punishment. But others were not so sure. The Zintari, a hive-minded insect race long at odds with the Cathari, sent quiet signals to Earth's nearest listening posts. Not threats, offers. They wanted trade. They wanted alliance. They saw what Earth had done, not with rage, but with control. That impressed them. The Luminae, gentle beings of light and thought, openly praised Earth's restraint. Elder Mira Solon stood before the council and said, "They could have burned your cities." They did not. They could have killed you. Leaders, they did not. They showed more honor in 1 hour than some of us have shown in centuries. Ambassador Calvor slammed his clawed hand on the council table. They attacked our capital without warning. Without declaration! That is not honor, that is cowardice. No, Solon replied calmly. That is strategy. And you taught them that lesson when you took their colonies without asking. The word stung. Vor had no answer. Back on Earth, life changed. People walked with their heads higher. Children drew pictures of black ships in the sky. News channels no longer spoke of shame, but of pride. Not pride in destruction, but in standing up for themselves. President Elena Ruiz addressed the world from the rebuilt Unity Plaza in Geneva. She stood alone, no guards, no armor, just a woman in a simple suit. "We are not conquerors," she said. "We never wanted to rule anyone. We only wanted to be treated as equals. If respect must be earned through strength, then so be it. But we will not become what they feared us to be." Her words were broadcast everywhere. Even on Velos Prime, some listened. In the hidden Antarctic base, Captain Daniel Reeves and Lieutenant Mara Ellis debriefed with Earth Command. They reviewed every second of the mission, every shot fired, every decision made. They found no mistakes, only discipline. "You held back," said General Cole, the head of Earth Defense, "even when you could have done more." Reeves nodded. "We're not here to start a war. We're here to end being treated like children." Cole smiled faintly. "Then you succeeded. The conquered is in chaos. Some want peace, some want revenge, but no one agrees on what to do next." "That's our window," Ellis said. "While they argue, we prepare." But preparation wasn't just about ships and weapons. It was about trust. Earth had shown it could fight. Now it had to show it could lead. Dr. Owen Pierce and Lena Torres worked day and night to upgrade the Iron Cradle fleet, not to make it deadlier, but smarter. Better shields, faster jumps, cleaner energy. They wanted Earth's tech to speak for itself, not as a threat, but as a promise of what humanity could offer. Meanwhile, diplomats who had once been ignored now received calls. Small species on the edge of conquered space reached out. They had suffered under the same rules that crushed Earth. They wanted to know, could they stand with humans? Earth said yes, but the real test came when the conquered finally called a new session, not to punish, but to talk. They invited Earth to send a representative, not as a petitioner, not as a prisoner, but as a voice. The choice was clear. Reeves was a soldier. He had done his part. Now it was time for someone who could speak as well as fight. Mara Ellis was promoted to Chief Diplomatic Envoy of Earth. She accepted without hesitation. "You'll be walking into a den of wolves," Reeves told her the night before she left. She smiled. "Good thing I know how to growl." He didn't smile back. "Just come home." "I will," she said, with a seat at their table. As her shuttle lifted off from Luna Base, Earth watched. Not with fear this time, but with quiet confidence. On Velos Prime, the Hall of Accord was tense. Species that had never questioned the Concord's authority now looked at each other with doubt. The Cathari stood in their usual place, arms crossed, faces hard. The Luminae glowed softly in their corner. The Zintari clicked their mandibles in quiet excitement. Then the doors opened. Mara Ellis walked in alone. She wore a simple dark suit, no armor, no weapons. Her hair was tied back. Her eyes were steady. She carried a small data crystal in her hand. All eyes turned to her. Some with anger, some with curiosity, a few with respect. She stopped at the center of the chamber and faced the council. "I come not to beg," she said, her voice clear and strong. "I come to remind you of something you forgot. Earth is not yours to manage. We are not your children. We are your equals. And if you doubt that, look at your broken shields. Look at your silent ships." She held up the data crystal. "This contains our terms: full return of all human colonies, full restoration of Earth's sovereignty, and one permanent seat on this council, with equal voice and veto power on any matter that concerns humanity." Gasps filled the room. Veto power was rare. Only the oldest species had it. Vor stood. "You dare demand such power after attacking us?" "I dare because you left us no choice," Ellis replied. "You took what was ours without asking. We took back your sense of safety without killing a single soul. If that is not balance, then your idea of justice is broken." She placed the crystal on the central pedestal. "The choice is yours. Accept these terms, and we stand with you as partners. Reject them and know this: Earth will not strike again, but we will never bow again either." Then she turned and walked out, leaving the crystal behind. In the silence that followed, Elder Solon spoke first. "She speaks truth." One by one, other species nodded. Even some of the Cathari's allies looked uncertain. The vote would come soon. But already the balance had shifted. Far away, on a quiet blue planet, people waited. Not in fear, not in anger, but in hope, because for the first time Earth was not asking to be heard, it was being listened to. Part 5. 6 months passed after Mara Ellis walked out of the Hall of Accord. The galaxy waited. Earth waited. Even the stars seemed to hold their breath. The data crystal she left behind sat on the central pedestal untouched for weeks. No one dared move it. It was not just a message. It was a test. Then slowly the Concord began to change. The Zintari were the first to openly support Earth's terms. They argued that stability came not from control, but from fairness. The Luminae agreed. Even some smaller species, those who had long been ignored by the Council, spoke up. They said if Earth could stand on its own, so could they. The Cathari resisted. Ambassador Cale Vor demanded punishment, not partnership. But his voice grew weaker with each passing day. His own allies began to question his pride. "You lost their colonies without a fight," one whispered. "They struck your capital and left your people alive. Who showed more strength?" Vor had no answer. Finally, the Council called a formal vote. Not in the Grand Hall of Accord, but on a neutral station near the Orion Rift. A place with no history, no bias, just cold metal and open space. It was a sign of respect. Earth was no longer an afterthought. It was a force that had to be faced as an equal. Mara Ellis arrived alone. She wore the same simple suit, carried no weapons, and walked with the same calm step. As she entered the chamber, every species turned to look. Some with fear, some with curiosity, a few with quiet admiration. The vote began. One by one, representatives cast their choice. The Zintari clicked their approval. The Luminae glowed bright gold, yes. The ocean-dwelling Mirakai pulsed their bioluminescent skin in agreement. Even the proud Velen, who had once called humans loud mammals, voted in favor. When it came to the Cathari, Vor stood in silence for a long time. Then without a word he pressed the neutral button. Abstain, not yes, not no, but not opposition either. The result was clear. Earth's terms passed with overwhelming support. As the lights in the chamber shifted to signal approval, Ellis did not cheer. She did not smile. She simply nodded as if she had expected nothing less. After the session, she stepped onto the station's outer viewing deck. The stars stretched endlessly in every direction. Below, Earth was just a pale blue dot, but it was hers. It was free. Footsteps sounded behind her. She didn't turn. She knew who it was. "Told you they'd listen," Daniel Reeves said as he joined her at the railing. "You didn't tell me anything," she replied. You just gave them a reason to. He leaned on the rail, looking out at the void. Do you think it'll last? She was quiet for a moment. Peace never lasts unless you're ready to defend it. But now they know we're ready. Back on Earth, people celebrated, but quietly. There were no wild parties. No burning of effigies. Just families gathered in homes. Friends sharing meals. Children looking up at the sky with new eyes. They knew what had been won was not just freedom but respect. And respect once earned was not easily lost. President Elena Ruiz stood on the steps of the Unity building and spoke to the world. Today, Earth takes its place among the stars, not as a beggar, not as a threat, but as a partner. We will not forget what it cost to get here, and we will never let it happen again. In the Antarctic base, Dr. Owen Pierce shut down the main reactor of Project Iron Cradle. The lights dimmed. The hum faded. The ships would remain, but they would not fly unless needed. Lena Torres stood beside him, watching the last console go dark. We did it, she said. We protected them, he replied. That's all we ever wanted. On Luna Base, new recruits trained not just in combat but in diplomacy, science, and language. Earth was no longer just defending itself. It was reaching out. Trade ships with human markings began to appear on distant routes. Medical teams offered help to plague-stricken colonies. Engineers shared clean energy designs with struggling worlds the galaxy noticed. And slowly they began to trust. Months turned into a year. The conquered changed. New voices were heard. Old rules were questioned. Earth's seat on the council was not just symbolic. Mara Ellis used it wisely, blocking unfair laws, supporting the weak, pushing for fairness. She never raised her voice. She didn't need to. Her presence was enough. One evening, Reeves found her on the station's garden deck watching Earth rise over the lunar horizon. Are going home soon? He asked. Soon, she said, but I'll be back. This is just the beginning, he nodded. They'll keep testing us. Some will still think we're weak. Let them, she said. We know who we are, and that was the truth. Earth was not the strongest, not the oldest, but it was stubborn. It was clever. And when pushed too far, it fought, not with hate, but with purpose. Far below, the blue planet turned in the sunlight. Cities glowed. Oceans shimmered. Forests breathed. It was small in the grand scale of the galaxy, but it was home. And now, no one would take that for granted again. The universe had learned a simple lesson. Never underestimate a species that has nothing left to lose, and everything to protect. And Earth, quiet and watchful, kept its eyes on the stars.